All right, take two. I just did an hour into this testimony and ran out of space on my phone, so cleared some stuff up. We'll see if it works out this time. Uh, Either way, even if I have to re-record it again, I'll do it. So I just wanted to get on here and share my testimony. I've been feeling led to do it for quite a while. So I'll just start from the beginning. Um, I've got some notes here, so that's what I'm looking at when you see me looking over here, and I'll just be marking it off as I go. So, I grew up in a split family. My mom and dad split up when I was about 6 years old, and I'm not going to get into. There's certain details of my story I won't get into because it includes other people, and I'm not here to put other people's business out there, but I'll just say what I can, and you know, the rest of it can just be unknown, or you can guess if you want, I guess. So I ended up, there was just domestic violence going on, and long story short, very long story short, I ended up being with my father for the rest of my childhood. So that would be I was week on, week off from first to fifth grade, and then from sixth grade, so 11 to 17. 11 years old to 17 years old, sixth grade to senior year of high school. I was together with just my father and stepmom. So, sorry. So, high school was I had a really typical high school growing. I mean, I grew up in a private school, but it was a fairly sheltered scenario. Wasn't exposed to a whole lot. I grew up in a very Christian household. My dad played worship music, and he would play at churches. We went to a handful of different churches at whatever given time. My stepmom worked at all the schools that I went to. I'm going to leave out the names of the churches and the schools, but we were always at Wednesday church, Sunday church, Saturdays even sometimes, even multiple services sometimes. We had chapel on Tuesdays at school, at both of the private schools I went to, and vacation Bible school, the whole thing. I mean, I was engulfed in it. Me and all my siblings were, and so that's my background. I come from a very Christian culture background. Not to say that my dad and family members didn't believe in God or anything like that. They did and do, but it was just I was surrounded by a lot of it was just not from my parents, but a lot of what I grew up around was just American Christian culture. It wasn't like the spiritual warfare on fire type of movement that we see a little bit more of today. And that was, I graduated in a little over 10 years ago. And so I was fairly insecure when I was in high school. Growing up, I just wanted to be cool. And so that mentality led me to follow a lot of people. And I mean, I can remember sort of a fork in the road where I was probably eighth grade, maybe a freshman, and I remember saying a cuss word and it burning my mouth. So it was like, I mean, I was a little goody two shoes for a little bit there. And at least that's what I would have been called at first, and I didn't like that very much. So I kind of wanted to push the envelope on things. I started getting in trouble in school, and started sneaking away from my parents, and trying to, I was just being difficult, and I think I felt like I hadn't, I wasn't able to grow up or something. I needed to grow up and couldn't grow up in the environment I was in. And I needed to make mistakes. I realized that once I started to make mistakes, I was like, this is what I needed. So I went through the whole high school phase of sneaking around, partying and drinking, and I'd gotten caught up stealing and I mean, some of it's fairly average high school stuff that I think a lot of teenagers go through. Um, but it actually got to the point where I ended up running away from home because my dad, what he found a picture of me with alcohol, and so he knew that I'd been drinking and doing something that he didn't know about that I wasn't supposed to be doing, and he said that he wasn't going to let me go on my senior trip, which I had already paid for. So in my eyes, I was going. You couldn't tell me nothing when I was 17. And um, we had a falling out for quite a while. Whenever I'd come home, I'd gotten fired up, and we got into an argument. To make a long story short on that, and I ended up calling a friend. He came and picked me up, and I was gone. I was sleeping in his bed, and we were. Eventually, I'd end up hopping from couch to couch, and it was just left my stability, and which I didn't know at the time. And so I ran away from home at 17. It was about 20 days before I would graduate high school. Um, so I ended up graduating, and when I left my dad's, I didn't have anything. I didn't have he had paid for my truck, my phone, probably all my clothes, probably everything. I don't even remember at this point, but um, I mean, I pretty much left with a ice chest that was mine, and my school uniform, and that was all I had. I ended up going and getting clothes from Walmart and a track phone and buying minutes, and I ended up eventually getting a truck for $1,500 from a junkyard, and just trying to get everything back. But I was determined not to go back to my dad's. At this point, we now have a really good relationship, but at this time, our relationship was definitely on the rocks. Um, so it was around this time that I felt like I was free, and I started to get more into different, just drugs and alcohol, especially drugs. Experimenting a lot. I wouldn't call myself an alcoholic or a drug addict, but that seems kind of aggressive, but I did drink a lot and smoked weed every single day, and um, would do. I wasn't doing a bunch of other drugs all the time, but if someone offered them to me, I would definitely take them. Um, just other sexual perversions, pornography, premarital sex, just doing kind of whatever I wanted, stealing. A lot of thievery was going on. Um, Probably won't talk about that much on here, but uh, just really going off the deep end with a lot of that stuff. And I didn't care. I wasn't thinking about it. I just was, in my mind, I was just living it up. I was just having a good time and didn't really care. But uh, I did eventually, uh, I say eventually like it was very long. It didn't take that long, maybe a year or so. I started really getting into psychedelics. And I would say the psychedelics was really when things started to turn for me in a negative way. I mean, things were fairly negative already, not in my eyes, but looking back now, they were fairly negative. But they, when I started taking the psychedelics, that's when I started to really get experiences, my first real dose of experiences in the spiritual world. Like, don't get me wrong, in high school and going to all the churches and all the different experiences I had, getaways and all that, like, I definitely had felt presence of the Lord, but there was nothing like these psychedelics, at least at the time, that I had experienced up to that point. So psychedelics have a real way of making you think that you are learning something that, and you're not. Like, and there, you may even pull things from it, but it's got a real way of showing, of like giving you an experience that no one else has ever had, and it makes it feel very unique to you. And like, you're doing stuff, you're like, my dad's never done this, my granddad, like nobody knows what this is all about. Like, I'm embarking on a new journey, and learning about the reality of the world. That's what it makes you feel like. And so I'll get into two of the experiences that were the biggest ones for me, that made the biggest difference. Um, so my first trip on psychedelic acid specifically was, I had um, I'm pausing because I'm trying to figure out exactly what I should say and what I shouldn't say, because I'm not trying to tell people how to do any of this stuff. But I'd taken psychedelics for my first time, and the and then we went and just listened to a song. What was it? Dark Side of the Moon, the album by Pink Floyd, and it there's a song on there called Time, that if you've listened to the song, you know what I'm talking about. It's like there's a gong that goes off and goes dong dong, with all these chimes and timers going off and clocks and stuff. And when you're deep on drugs like that, it can get crazy, because a lot of people that don't haven't ever taken this sort of thing think that psychedelics or hallucinogens is just, you're just seeing stuff. You're just like, it's just like you're seeing weird stuff on drugs and seeing stuff that's not there. But that is like a very light version of what it really is, because a lot, and maybe some of it is you're just seeing stuff that something's being put in front of you, but a lot of the time you're seeing behind the veil of reality, and you're experiencing things that are some of the most real experiences that you've ever had before. Uh, because we're spiritual beings, and when you enter into the spiritual world like that, especially so aggressively, it's like the real deal. You feel it more than you feel what you feel here in the three-dimensional world, in the three-dimensional plane. And so, anyways, I'd taken that first bit the first time, and listening to that song, I remember that my first time really seeing something change in front of me. With my eyes were open, but I was seeing stuff that wasn't there, and I was watching the fabric of reality up here and down here splitting apart, and I could see in it was like a stair step with each gong. I could see a stair step, the gong of the song, that song Time I was talking about. Could see the stair step and see, it's like I could see through the fabric of reality. And that was like at that point, it was one of the more intriguing things I'd ever experienced, where I was like, hold on, something's going on here in this world. Like that, it just opened my eyes to a new view of things I'd never thought of before. And I remember feeling like after I took that acid for the first time, I remember feeling like my mind had begun to blossom, and I had started to think about things in ways I'd never thought about them, and have experiences I'd never had. I felt like I was becoming more enlightened and growing in understanding of what the reality of things were. I now know all of that was just deception, but at this point I didn't know. It was my first experience with something like this, and I didn't know really what to do. I didn't have anywhere to put this, and I do think that's a problem nowadays, for a lot of people in the Christian world, they don't have answers for these sorts of things, and I needed them. I didn't seek out Christian answers, but um, I was seeking, and uh, not a lot of Christians really know what to do with this sort of thing. I had another experience, and this is the one that was really, this one has stayed with me in a real way and probably always will. So, um, basically, me and one of my buddies had gotten real strung out one day. Like I said, we were just degenerates and just drinking a bunch of alcohol, getting hammered, and uh, smoking weed, taking Xanax, doing cocaine, all that night. We were just doing everything, uppers, downers, getting drunk, just everything you could do mixed together at that point. Ended up blacking out and woke up at my house, which is not where we were. So somehow we got there, and ended up waking up with four acid tabs in my mouth, and so did he. And we did not know that. We just woke up and we were already. We could tell. You could look at the walls. You could tell that we were already on something. We didn't really know what was going on. Come to find out, immediately we found out that we were on psychedelics, and so we were like, all right, well, we got to ride this out. There's no going back now. I really feel bad about this one too, because this was my brother's birthday, was this day, and I think he was turning 18, and he was really wanting me to be there, and I couldn't be there because I couldn't be in front of my family coming off of acid. My pupils were huge. There was just no way that was going to happen. Um, so I had taken, or I'd called my buddy, a different guy, to come pick us up. I was like, hey, I guess we're tripping today, so come and drive us around if you're free, I guess. Like, I don't know, we ain't got nothing to do, and we're just at this house, so we were at my house. Well, the house I was staying at. I won't say whose. And he ended up coming and getting us, and right before we left, I took one more. And so I used to listen to people like Terrence McKenna. There's probably a handful of people here who will know who I'm talking about, but in the hippie spaces, he was very influential. And I remember he had said that a five tabs was a heroic dose, and the heroic dose is what it takes to blast off into the next dimension, the next place, when you are having open eye visions and gone. And I don't know, I don't remember if I really knew that or not, but I know Terrence McKenna said that, and it was definitely true. Because so what happened next was we went and got some food, but my buddy, he was going into the military, who had taken it with me, and he needed to pass a drug test. Probably just like a P test or something. So he couldn't pass it. He couldn't pass if he had smoked. So he didn't. So he wouldn't smoke. But I went ahead and smoked weed. I'm talking about weed, and and for anyone who has smoked and done psychedelics before, smoked weed and done psychedelics, it amplifies it. Because truly, in my opinion, I think that marijuana, THC, is just a low grade psychedelic that people get used to. But if you take enough, if you do edibles or something, people know, like, you'll reach some sort of psychedelic state if you overdo it. People do it all the time. And then people take a ton of it and nothing happens, but it's usually just from being, you've just pumped so much THC in your system for so long, you're just really used to it. So but anyway, so I ended up taking 5, and we went to go get some food. And whenever I'd taken my first hit, my high got amplified tremendously, and this is when I started to feel myself. My person within was pulling out of my body. It was like my consciousness was leaving my body. Now I think I don't really know how to verbalize it, but I believe that the correct way to describe it would have been my spirit exiting my body and going somewhere else. Not in the sense that my body dies, but leaving from behind my eyes to somewhere else. And so, but I don't really know. I had the experience and I try to make sense of it. But I remember the first thing I started to see was a cube. So it was like a cube like this. It was a black cube, and it had blue. Um, it was like a blue light beaming from the edges and the corners of it, and there was a point right here, which is in my mind it was where I was, and then I saw it jump, and there was like a silver stream, and it landed up on this other side. So you landed on the other side of the cube, and thinking about it, I don't know, but in the Bible it talks about the silver cord and the cutting of the silver cord, and I wonder if that's what I was seeing. I don't really know. I wonder, it could have been that that's what I was seeing was me at one point in one reality, the current one that we're in right now, and then jumping over here, seeing that silver cord follow me into this next reality that I was still connected to. I was still connected to the silver cord that was connected to my body in this reality, and then jumping over here to this new dimension, but with my spirit and my silver cord connecting it. I don't know. I like I said, I just try to make sense of this. But we can maybe I'll make another video in the future or something about that, about silver cord and stuff. But uh, we'll see what God says. So I'm floating in and out. I regain consciousness. I come back. I'm like, oh yeah, bud, I'm good. No big deal. Trying to hold it together. And then I look at him, and his face turns into a clown face. He's trying to give me water because I'm coughing on this chicken that I'm eating and choking. He's digging it out of my mouth. It's a mess. It's freaking embarrassing now that I talk about it. Digging it out of my mouth, and he was trying to give me water. And I remember I thought water was the enemy. For some reason in my mind, water became bad. And I was like, I am not drinking this water. He can't get me to do it. And I would just sit there staring at him. He was trying to keep me from choking to death. He was trying to help me, but my mind, it tricked me. It made me think he was or the enemy came. I allowed the enemy into my mind at that point in a tremendous way through taking the psychedelics, that he turned my friend into an enemy to me. I believed it with my whole heart, and I was like, he's trying to hurt me, and she wasn't. But so I see these faces down at the bottom of my vision, and um, they're demon, like cartoon demon faces right here at the bottom, the corners, and they're just talking negative. They're being mean. They're trying to tell me that I'm not gonna. I can't handle it. I can't make it. I'm not gonna make it. And I don't know if you hear that yelling. That's my little boy. But they were trying to just discourage me and put me in fear. And I was afraid. And but if anyone who's taken these things before, you know that to fight it can feel like in the moment you're taught. If you are in these circles, you're taught that like fighting it is the wrong thing to do, and you want to just go with it and give in and allow it to do its thing and take the ride. Otherwise, you're going to have a bad trip. That's what you're taught. Now, I believe that it is one of the ways that Satan deceives us into coming into agreement and allowing a demonic entity into our soul. And because that's basically what you're doing, is you're taking a leap of faith, but you're taking a leap of faith towards the enemy to take care of you, is what's happening in this moment. And so I'm at the top of what seems like a roller coaster. I see everything normal in front of me. It's a regular vision, but then I come like this, and my view goes straight down like I'm going down a roller coaster, and it goes into this. I like run down this black track. I say track. It's just like a strip, like just a black linear line. It's just a strip, and I see a dot at the very end of it, um, beaming down this line, and then boom, I hit that dot, and I stop right there. And at this point, I'm able to completely understand, feel, and realize how much of a part of infinity I am, that everyone is, but myself specifically is what I was ultra aware of, that I was able to feel infinite. I could actually grasp the concept. There wasn't a beginning and end, it was forever and ever. Like, kept going. And I could feel that, and I could feel how much there was no escape from that. We've got to understand that we are infinite. That we are. There isn't an end. Uh, there isn't an there. It's not like there's a beginning dot and then an end dot, and there it is. Like, there's your life. You know, beginning date, end date. The dash is the life you lived. No, that's physical body, and it keeps going, and it goes continuously forever. Uh, it's something that we cannot grasp, but it is the reality. Our spirit body can grasp it, but we cannot grasp it in the third dimension, three dimension that our physical body lives in. And so, anyways, I start feeling that, and I associate it directly with where I'm at. So when I run down this strip, hit this dot, I look around. I don't have eyes. I don't have arms, legs. I can't like turn around with my body. I'm just a point. I've always said it was just a point of awareness. I think I heard that from somewhere else too, but it's always been the best explanation. It was just a point that I was at and just could look around. I was aware. And I'd look around, and it was like I was in a big dome that was. So the what I saw was, it was the colors black, white, gray, and pink, and it was like, I've always said camouflage, but it wasn't really camouflage. It was more like when you see a reflection of the water to the bottom of a pool, and you see the texture it makes, the way it moves at the bottom of the pool, the light does. It was like that. It was like the colors were just like all folded around each other. I don't know. It just, that's the best. It's not a perfect explanation, but it's the best way I can describe it. Was like, if you looked at the bottom of a pool and saw the reflection of light down there, but the only colors that were available were pink, black, white, and gray. And then I would feel pain. So I would feel, I'd have one memory pop up, and then I would feel it. Another memory pop up, and they were all traumatic memories. And I wasn't being hurt in the sense of like a cut or an ache or a sore or something. It was a hurt in my center, in the essence of who I was. There was a pain. It was the worst pain that you could feel. It wasn't a pain of your nerve endings. It was just indescribable, because it was like a spiritual pain. It wasn't something you can really explain. It was but it hurt. And there wasn't fire. I didn't see fire. I don't believe that I was in hell. I don't believe that I was in hell, but I do think that I was in some sort of torture chamber area, something, because I was being tortured here. And I would go from one pain to another pain, which was associated with an experience or a traumatic event that had happened to me in my past. I'd go to the next one, the next one. I don't remember what those experiences were, and that was all part of the deception too, that I'll get to in a second. Um, I I don't remember what the traumatic events were that were popping up while I was there. But as I would go through each pane, once it would come to the next one, the colors would change from pink, black, white, gray to green, black, white, and then next one was blue, black, white, gray, or whatever, something like that. And it was it felt like I was there forever. I mean, I truly thought that I was done. I thought, you're in hell. I thought I was in hell at the time because I was like, this is infinite torture. I don't know what else you call it. I don't see fire, but I mean, this sucks. So I don't know what else to call this. Um, anyway, so eventually I do come out of that, and I felt like I couldn't see the person because I I just didn't look over there. But you have something that happens in the spirit whenever you're in the spiritual realm. There's a form of communication that you don't necessarily have to use your mouth or your eyes, but you are just aware of what's going on around you. Like you know what someone looks like even if you don't look at them, or you can feel what someone's thinking when you're not actually speaking, or you can hear what people are saying when you're not actually speaking. It's I don't think telepathic is the right word, but it's just spiritual communication. I really don't know. But I knew that there was an older man next to me that started taking me through all of these different, I mean, what I would describe as space. Uh, I don't know that it was actually space, but it's what it looked like. And I was flying through all these triangles. They were like just triangle, 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 pew, just flying through them. And um, next next thing I know, I come to a place that just I abruptly stop at, and I see purple pyramids. They're not like pyramids on Earth, but it was pyramids, and I could see blocks that had electricity all around them, and they were floating and being set into a new place. Next one was floating, being set into a new place. I hope y'all can't hear these notifications going off. Um, and I was just watching them being stacked up higher and higher and higher. And I don't know I don't know what that means, but that's what I saw. And then the next phase, I went flying through again, and flying through the next portal, I guess. And um, I would turn these down, but I don't know if that's gonna turn me down. I don't know how this computer works, to be honest with you. I'd fly through the next portal, and it would be the same thing, zooming through triangles, and then I would stop at the next place. And the next place I saw was, it was a plane, like plane as in a flat plane. It was just like the texture of grass, and uh, from top to bottom, texture of grass, but it was all flat. It wasn't like you would touch it and it would feel like grass. If anything, you would touch it and it would feel like a screen or something, a piece of paper, something flat. And same thing for what I was seeing. That was what was in front of me, and then when I was looking at that, I could see another plane, flat plane that looked like grass, but it was flat, and it would fold up like this. So then I had one here, and then a grass textured tube connecting the two. And I don't, like I said, I don't know what that means. I don't know if it means anything. I think it could have been was just trying to get me curious, because at the end of the day, now I see all of this as the enemy playing mind games with me, and having its way with me, trying to show me stuff that was cool so it could get me hooked and be like, oh wow, like I'm really like figuring stuff out. So then I would zoom off somewhere else again. Boom, fly through the triangles. This one I don't really remember so well, but I remember it was like orange and red and lava, like fiery. I don't know where it was, don't know what it was. I don't really have a perfect I don't have a perfect memory of what it looked like, but something makes me like like what I would imagine it looks like on Mercury or something. just hot. But I didn't feel it. I didn't feel hot, but it looked hot and like lava and orange and fiery. Anyway, so then I think I probably went through a couple more places, but it was so much. Like, I'm shocked that I can even remember as much of it as I do. These many years later, I remember so much of it. There's definitely some of the stuff that happened in there that I don't remember. Me and my buddy had done the math later on. I was in that realm for an hour and 20 minutes. And when I ended up waking up or coming back into the real world, I was like, I don't know what just happened. I looked around, saw I had made a huge mess. Uh, oh yeah, I remember whenever I was in that place, in all that pain, he told me that I was sitting there in his passenger seat, just like tensing up all my every muscle, and just I wasn't thrashing, but I was slowly, like, he could tell I was hurting and just like moving back and forth real slow, but real hard. Like, I was really gritting down and hurting. And I wasn't in, I didn't, I don't, I woke up and was like, dude, I made a mess. There's chicken all over me. There's, I've made a huge mess. There's ketchup all over his dash. I'm like, dude, what did I do? I'm like, my bad, bud. And he was cool. Me and him are still friends to this day. But I was like, sorry, didn't mean to do that. Anyways, went through the rest of the day and ended up missing my brother's birthday. So that was a major bummer. But the experience that I got from that was one that you would think that after that I would be like, okay, now I'm gonna turn to the Lord. I went to hell and it was eternal, and I was just tortured, and I saw demons, but that didn't even cross my mind. I didn't even come close to doing that. I don't know. I don't really know what I was thinking. It was just I thought that I was onto something. I think like I was like I got to go back. Which I did want to go back. I never did go back, but I wanted to go back. And the best way I heard that explained was, um, uh, what was it? Is it demonic Stockholm syndrome? Because it was like they were torturing me, but then they gave me a little bit of something that made me want to come back. And I never did, like I said, but uh, to some of the deception I was talking on was uh, like what they make you think is that you're like chosen, and that you now have answers that other people do not have, and you're you're the kind that are, this is where people get really lost at, that are in this world, because you can't you can't tell them it didn't happen. You can't tell me that this didn't happen. So it's like, what do you have to say about that? What if you don't have a place in your understanding of the spiritual world and the things of God and the things of the enemy, then, and to be able to really articulate that, then, I mean, these people that I say, these people, I was them. I'm like, you don't know, like you have no idea what you're even talking about, you freaking Bible thumper. You have not, like, you're in your book, and that's all you know, and you don't know, you haven't had these experiences like I have. And it's, I think that I was being shown all that stuff to make me think that I was getting answers, or I was getting pieces to an answer or something. But like I said, it was all just pure deception. Um, but uh, it's one of the things with those psychedelics. You have to invite those beings in, and this is when, for me, I was basically a preacher for psychedelics. I was like, this is like, this is the answer. Everyone should do this. You hear people like Joe Rogan say that every president should take psychedelics, or every politician in the world would be a better place. That's not true, but I totally understand that thought process, because I believed that at one point. It seems like that was the truth. But anyways, so it was that sort of thing that led me off into all these different avenues there's other New Age people that have gotten way deeper than I got, but I started to kind of get curious. I never dove into it heavily. Thankfully, I got, God got a hold of me before I got too deep or deeper. I was already pretty deep, but it got deeper. Um, what I got into like chakra alignment, at least trying to understand it. I didn't do like Kundalini yoga and all these different practices and mantras and stuff to try to reach a certain point, but I was curious about it. I did think that there was something to it. Um, Aliens and ancient astronaut theory and the Anunnaki and all these different things that you listen to other people's testimonies and you realize the new age is vast. There's so many different avenues that people can take. I was really into the alien and psychedelic side of things. Some people get really into the tarot cards and the Ouija boards and the palm readings and stones and astrology and all that. And that wasn't really my thing, but um, if I would have stuck around long enough, I'm sure I'd have been right there with them. I was more in the alien psychedelic side of things. And anyway, so it wasn't. I would say that it was whenever I was living that I ended up moving to a place in just a ghetto house somewhere. Had prostitutes walking through in front of my house that were trying to get business out there, and people selling drugs everywhere, and just not a great neighborhood, not a place you want to raise a family at. Sadly, people do have to raise families there, but you know, hopefully the Lord will keep me from having to go back there ever again. I will if I have to, but I don't want to. but so I can remember there was a time where I was living in that house, and I'm still, like I said, that didn't pull me out of anything, that experience, but it did add to my testimony. It added to my understanding of spiritual things and trying to get a grasp on more than what I had picked up in my. It ends up playing a role in the future that is very positive for me, in the sense that it gave me an understanding of how the enemy works. Not that I gained an understanding that because I took psychedelics and they granted something. They didn't grant anything but deception to me. Um, but I'll get there. I'll round it off. But I remember there was a time I was in my car and I was getting a little curious about God. I was getting curious about remembering whenever I was younger and the things of the Lord. And I'd ask God, and I was speaking to Jesus. I wasn't speaking to, some Hindu god or Buddha or any other. I was speaking to the Trinity, the God of the Bible, Jesus Christ that I knew growing up. And just so we're not confused, I wasn't like speaking. I didn't think I was talking to the universe or anything. I was speaking directly to Jesus. I didn't say that, but that's what I meant in my head. And I just said, hey, God, if you're real, show me you're real. And it was like a flood of euphoria came over me. The best way I could ever describe it, that people I know it makes people cringe. It makes me cringe a little bit describing it this way, but it's just the only thing I can think to relate it to is whenever I would take Molly, it would be just pure euphoria. And this is like that times 1,000. Like I was crying in the car. I was like, for the first time, I understood what people meant, or at least it took on a whole new meaning for me when people said they're high on Jesus. I was like, boy, I mean, that is what I'm feeling right now. Like, that was just the immediate thing I related it to in that moment. I was like, that's what this feels like, but it feels clean, and it was clean because it was the Holy Spirit covering you and giving you just bliss, pure bliss. And it ended up fading away, and I, like, again, it didn't do anything where I was like, I'm going to change my ways. Like, I don't really have one of those testimonies where it was like the switch flipped and now look at me, like, boom, overnight. Like, it was a process of all these experiences coming into one and then sanctifying for years over a period of time. And so then we moved into another house. I should have probably said it earlier, but at this point, I had been with at the time, now it's my wife, but it was my girlfriend at the time. It'd probably been like 2 years at this point. And so she's been with me since I was doing all this. And, we were both a mess. We looked like there was times we were walking around outside and in the ghetto part of town that we were living in, walking around. I hadn't done my hair. My hair was long. I used to have hair in the middle of my back, and she's been in a giant t-shirt, and we're just walking around outside in the middle of the day. I'm not wearing a shirt, just looking like an absolute friggin' mess. And we're just on drugs, walking around outside, thinking we're enjoying the day. I look back and I'm like, you were a freaking crackhead. But anyways, so we ended up moving to a new part of town, a nicer part of town, and much nicer, like multiple steps up. We were still with roommates and all that, but and we were not married. We weren't married. We were having premarital sex. We were doing drugs, and I was definitely doing more of that than her. But she was partaking in some stuff. But I was definitely more of the substance abuse type of person, more than she was. Much heavier on that. Ended up moving to a new house, and I think it was because I'd gotten a job at the time. I was delivering food I'm not going to say the business, but one of the food delivery services. And I was so I had a ton of time to get on YouTube, and this was in the 2019 era. So pre-COVID, I was on YouTube and started to come across content, more political content. I never was into politics. It's something I'm much more attuned to now, but back then I did not care about any of that. I didn't care about politics, and I really didn't, I thought I cared about God and stuff, but really it was just kind of like, I kind of wonder. Also, I'm trying to get high, so I don't know. I wonder until I don't really care. And so I started to come across more Christian content and content about Hollywood and the depravity of Hollywood and like the subliminal messages in our cartoons that I'd never seen before. And I was like, what are we doing? Like, what is, someone made this and they're like trying to mess with little kids, and this is like, it was throwing me off. I just was shocked. All of it was shocking. I started to see the stuff of concerts and what different artists would do, or what they were singing about, the lyrics of what they were singing about, and I was like, I drew the connection between like, it's not anti-Hindu, it's not anti the Allah or Buddha or the whatever other religion you could pick. It wasn't anti any of that. It was anti-Jesus. It was anti the cross. And I immediately put that together and was like, I mean, why are y'all beating up on the cross so bad? And then I had enough of a foundation to know that Jesus was the real deal. It was just, I was lost for a while, and I still, even after this, I still wasn't there. But this is where it really began for me, where I started to turn that leaf over, and kind of play around with the things of God, of Jesus, and but like I said, it wasn't a flip of the switch sort of moment for me, and so I start looking at all that different content, seeing all these things, and I was like, I thought I was on fire. I mean, I felt like I was, but it was I didn't take care of the fire that I had in my spirit, because I was like, this is like, I got to get right. I got to start doing the right thing. I told Taylor, I was like, we got to stop. Or my wife, I told her, or we weren't married yet. My girlfriend at the time, I said, we're not we gotta stop having sex, and you know, I'm I'm gonna stop watching pornography, which I didn't. I'm gonna stop drinking. I'm gonna quit smoking. Um, gonna quit everything, stealing stuff, which I think I had already quit stealing stuff by then, but just quit everything. It was very legalistic still. Um, the, the relationship wasn't really there, and that was one of the big problems. I didn't have a relationship or community around me, and at the time, and she was kind of just following my lead, so she wasn't really diving in with it either. Um, but neither was I. I thought I was, but I wasn't doing it right. I wasn't surrounding myself with the people I needed to. I was leaving myself vulnerable. But so the next thing I started to see was here. Let's see. I started coming across content of uh, the connection between demons and aliens, which I never thought about until I saw this content, and I was like, "What?" And I saw these testimonials and documentaries, people talking about how they would see what they would classify as an alien abduction happening to them, but whenever they would call on the name of Jesus, those aliens would leave them, and they would they would they might not have even believed in Jesus, but it was part of the testimonial and putting all these pieces together of like, why are they afraid of Jesus so much? And obviously that was where the whole like their demonic aspect came into it. But I didn't fully know where I sat on that issue. Now I'm much more comfortable with that idea. Um, but still, it's like, who really knows? I would say I lean 95% towards that direction though. But at the end of the day, I don't really know. Um, but so I went to sleep that night and was thinking about or I wasn't thinking about it that night, but I had people talking about being hovering out of their bed, seeing these things around them, and so I went to sleep that night, and then I heard a voice that woke me up, and it was like, have you ever seen Harry Potter when he starts speaking that snake language, Tongue or whatever it's called? I don't know, I don't remember, but it starting to speak like that. Sounded just like that if you sped it up. If you like put it on times two or times three speed, that's what it would sound like, was what I was hearing that woke me up. So I had an audible, I was able to pick up on whatever was next to me audibly. And I opened my eyes and realized I couldn't move, so I was having sleep paralysis, which I'd never had before. And and I could see out of my peripheral vision it sitting there, and it was just a cloud being that was making this sound, making this. It was speaking in demonic tongues, is what it was. And I had already known about Christian tongues. I'd never considered demonic tongues before. I had grown up around people speaking in tongues my whole life, so that wasn't new to me at all. But the demonic tongues was something I had never considered. And so it was, I was in fear. It was speaking to me, saying something, don't know what it was saying, and all I knew in the moment was to call out to Jesus, and I couldn't open my mouth though, so it was all in my mind, spirit, however you want to classify that, I guess, because I don't know, but I from within I don't remember exactly what I said, something along the lines of, uh, in the name of Jesus, leave this room. And before I could even get the whole thought of Jesus out into my mind, this thing, I watched it fly out of my room like a dark phantom, fly out of my room. And my whole room lit up. It didn't light up. Well, there was a thick darkness over my room whenever that thing was there. And then whenever it left, it was just like the normal darkness of a room when the light's off, which is what my room was at the time. And so it was like my room lit, the heavy darkness had left my room and it just went to the regular lights off room scenario. And I woke up. I didn't tell anybody what had happened yet because I was still processing it. I didn't really know. And I did eventually end up bringing it up to my wife, and I brought it up to multiple people. It's definitely one of the bigger stories, and for a little bit there, it was one of the scenarios that when I would be like, well, how do we know that Jesus wasn't just I was going through all these trying to figure out answers to stuff. I was like, how do we know that Jesus wasn't just like a cult leader and the Jews are really right, and the New Testament is all false. It should have just been Old Testament and Talmud. Or how do we know that these other guys, they don't have the answers over here? I was going through like the whole trying to answer which religion is the right one, like who has the truth. And at the time, I didn't have many answers, but I did have that experience to lean on, and I was like, that thing was scared of Jesus. That thing, and that thing responded and ran away from the name of Jesus. That was what it was. It wasn't any other name. And so that gave me a foundation to stand on, something to always remember and bounce off of and say, okay, well, can they answer this question? Because none of them, from my understanding, would have been able to answer that question. Not that they would have believed me, but that wasn't really my concern, because that was more of a personal story for me to help me through my faith walk. Um, so I had sleep paralysis, and so and then there was another moment. Me and my girlfriend. She was my girlfriend, like I said at the time, and we were, she was kind of walking with me through this, but she wasn't really into it like I was. I was trying to be into it, but also I was not fully dove in either, and still sinning and knowing I was sinning, not repentant, which was a major issue. But I do remember another time she had come with me to my grandma's funeral, and she was feeling very just not good. So we ended up leaving and going to get some food, and she was about to have a panic attack in the booth where we were eating. So I was getting the check to leave. She had walked outside, and we didn't know this until later on when we had discussed it, but we had both seen, when we had stepped outside, we had like psychedelic visions, or visuals, really. It wasn't visions, it was just the visuals that you get when you're on those substances, which now for me has been a very common. Whenever I am experiencing something demonic, I can almost always tie it back to something that I would experience on psychedelics every time. Oh, yeah, I forgot. Well, let me finish this story. Um, so she was having a panic attack. I didn't know. I'm not really familiar with these panic attacks and stuff. And I was like, I don't know, we need to take you to a hospital? Like, I don't know what to do. And eventually ran out of options and just put my hand on her while I was driving and just started screaming. I guess I was praying. I wouldn't really say, I mean, yeah, it was a prayer. It was a prayer. I was screaming over my wife, had my hand on her. I was like, in the name of Jesus, leave her alone. You know, demons, get out of here. I don't know what I said. I don't remember what I said. It was a very, I mean, I still pray pretty immaturely, I think, but I'm trying. But it was definitely an immature prayer, but it was from my heart. And then, like that, just snap of fingers, her the tunnel vision, that panic attack dissipated in, I mean, seconds. My brother was in the back seat, so he witnessed the whole thing, and it was a pretty emotional moment, um, for me, and for my brother. I don't really know about it for her though. I think she was still worried, and she was in a different place herself. So I'm not here to necessarily talk about everything with my wife either. That's her story. So I'm gonna just leave some of that stuff out. But um, anyway, so that was another experience that I'd had around the demonic, and seeing God at work, and the power of using Jesus' name. So, but like I said, I wasn't with a community of people, and I ended up falling short. Um, the only reason I won't get into too many details is because It obviously involves my wife because we had split up. And I just don't. I mean, I guess all of y'all can guess and come up with all your own little ideas, but I'm just not going to speak on it yet. Maybe I will in the future, but right now I'm just not going to speak on it because it's her business too. So it's not necessarily for the entire internet to know about until unless she decides that that's fine too. So not going to um, not going to break that trust with her. Um, so pregnant with torment, falling short. So me and my wife, we had split up for not a very long time. I mean, maybe like a year, so maybe it was a little while, but or something like that. I really don't remember. It was during COVID time, so COVID time had started to hit, and everybody was really thrown off during COVID. So time was weird. The world was weird. I mean, that was just a different time. So it's kind of hard for me to really pinpoint exactly how long everything was. I mean, the fact that I look back and COVID was 5 years ago is freaking insane. Um, oh yeah, so I wanted to speak on whenever I'd had those psychedelic experiences. Another thing that I'd gotten out of that, which this is all part of the deception, is I was given uh, like a sixth sense, and it was a demonic sixth sense, where if something would happen that I knew was about to set off a chain reaction of problems, I would have like this gong, just I don't know, it was just like a loud dong that would go off in my head, and I would hear it, but I would also kind of see it a little bit, like my world would shake around me a little bit, and I'd be like, okay, don't do that, or turn around from that, and I thought that it was like at the time I was like, I'm like excelling in my abilities and growing in my spiritual ways or whatever. These are the gifts of the these are the real gifts of the spirit. I'm getting a sixth sense. It was all deception. It was all to trick me and to make me think that I was getting something, but I was drinking from the poison well, and it was just leading me down a road of destruction. I should have said that earlier because it happened. I'd gotten that after my first trip. My first time I'd taken it and had the whole seeing the fabric of reality break in front of me. That was when I first started to experience that. Was after that. So I should have said that earlier, but I forgot. And there's probably a ton of stuff I'm leaving out. I mean, I know there is because that's just how it's gonna go. But I'm trying to remember as much as I can and try to type as much as I could. Um, like I said, falling back into bad habits. When we had split up, I started drinking again. I started to uh, smoke a little bit again. I wouldn't say I never fell back into everything. I wasn't doing cocaine and popping pills and doing all that, but I was at this point. I'm still continuing pornography and drinking alcohol, like hard liquor now. I really wasn't a hard liquor guy all the time, but now I'm starting to become a hard liquor tequila guy, and uh, just been smoking some weed and just getting very casual, kind of being like, I just don't feel like doing the whole God thing. And like I said, it was because the relationship wasn't there. Like it was all legalistic rules. It wasn't what keeps you tight is that daily prayer. It's that daily bread. It's the reading your Bible on a daily basis. It's constantly meeting up with the Lord and including him on the decisions that you're making throughout the day. And those sorts of and testing the voice of God to try to get familiar with his voice, not testing like being like, give me, if you're real, give me a sign, just like listening to that still small voice, doing what it says, and then realizing that, okay, so that's what his voice sounds like. So you just kind of ran a little experiment. Now he told you to do this thing, and now you get confirmation through whatever it is, and you realize that, oh, that's what God sounds like. This is him. So I always thought this was me just thinking to myself or something, but it's that still small voice. Anyways, so like I said, we had gotten back together, and we were kind of just falling about 50% back into our old ways, I would say. But, still enough to keep you damned It was not. We weren't living right. That's for sure. Um, we'd ended up getting married. We went to Colorado, got married, and uh, I remember saying to her, and it even says it in our vows. And I remember speaking to her and telling her like I wanted to have a Christian marriage. I didn't even know what that meant. I don't think. I knew that was what I wanted and needed. I just didn't know how to go about it. Well, I didn't want to do what I knew I needed to do, which was dive in head first and be like, and take that step into the Lord's arms. But I told her that, and it was really just coming out of my mouth. It wasn't, it wasn't something she could really respect. I don't think, because it's like you're watching me say this, and then I'm getting high. So but I did say it was in our vows, and I wanted to. I'd made, and I verbally pray or verbally made the vow intentionally, and in front of God and everyone else. And again, wanted to have a marriage under the Lord, and but we weren't there. We just weren't there, and so those were all in, and when we had come back, we'd ended up moving to some apartments eventually, and we were smoking, and we had smoked, and we had this crazy experience that made me think that it was laced. But again, I looked at it in that moment, and I wasn't sure if it had been laced with LSD or something. I mean, some sort of liquid psychedelic or something. Because I thought that I was tripping again, because she was like, something's off about this. And I was like, no, we're good. Just go to bed. And I was like sitting there, and I was like, something is weird. But if we're tripping right now, I can't say anything, because I'm going to mess her all up. So, but we were shivering. We were sitting in bed. We were shaking, shivering, and cold, and jittering our teeth, and like antsy, couldn't quit moving. And she was like, I need a blanket. I ran down and ran back and forth, giving her blankets. And then she was like, Jake, stop. And I looked, and I was like, oh my gosh, what am I doing? It's like 2 o'clock in the morning. I just brought you 15 blankets. I went to get under him. It was like 30 pounds of blankets I'm trying to get under. I'm like, what is going on? I'm losing my mind. And eventually it did subside, but it was scary. Like, we thought that we were I had to go to work the next day. She did too. We thought we were losing it, and it was going to be a problem. But we went back and we had asked the person that we got it from. They said it was fine. They were like, I'm smoking it right now. The people around us have smoked it. You've smoked it already, and you were fine. We went and got a drug test. Didn't test positive for anything but THC. So it was like, I don't know. We were trying to figure out like what was in this. I've come to the conclusion that it was a demonic attack. When I think about it, it feels almost like it was God being like, hey, I told you to quit. It's like thumping me, being like, hey, I told you to quit doing all that. And you want to have this life that you say you want to have, but you're going to keep smoking this weed. You're not supposed to be smoking. And drinking. I was also drinking, so there's that. And, but we did. After that day, we never smoked again. We stopped and never went back, and I will never smoke again. It was an experience that I was like, okay, God's watching me, and he's not cool with me doing this. Still fairly lukewarm in my Christianity though. But then we had moved to a new home, and I told her that I think that I was ready to have a kid. And as unstable as I've sounded through this entire testimony, at this point I was getting there. Like, I could have been a lot worse. I really could have been, but I was getting there where I was starting to become a stable individual, and I felt that I was ready to have a kid. And if I could have gone back and I could just clean my act up earlier on, and have kids earlier, I would have 5 kids right now or something. I would have a lot. But at the time, I was ready to have a kid finally, and I told her, and she was like, let's go. So we started trying for a baby, and we ended up having our son, our only son right now. and it really started to put things in perspective, as that does to people. When you have a kid, everyone is so cliche, I know, but when you have a kid, it's just everything changes, and your mind changes. You think about things and people differently, and that was definitely happening to both of us. And she started growing closer to the Lord. I began growing closer to the Lord. Started really trying to listen to His voice, and it was still hit or miss. It was still off and on. But there was a time. It was probably, I want to say 2023. I could be off though. Could be a little off. But me and one of my buddies were gonna start a pressure washing business, and then I had no peace about it. All I could remember was um, all I could think about was that this wasn't the right thing to do, and I don't need to do it. And it was scary because I needed the money, and I was trying to get out of this other job, and I had bought all this equipment. I'd committed to it with this buddy of mine. We were close friends. I was like, I can't go back and tell this dude, hey, I'm not doing this now. But I could not reach peace over that subject, and so I ended up coming to him and telling him, I was like, man, I gotta break this to you. This is like one of the hardest things for me to tell you right now, but I can't do this. I want to, but the Lord is just telling me, or I can feel it. Like I'm just feeling pushed in this direction that I can't do this. This isn't the right way. I don't know. It's not like pressure washing is from the devil or something. It's just this is not the plan for me, and God is not letting me. He's not like leaving me alone on this one. He's driving me crazy on this one. So um, I'm just gonna have to back out. So I ended up backing out, and luckily that guy, he's a great guy. Still one of my best friends to this day. I still talk to him all the time. Um, so end up. So what I was led to do though, is gonna sound like a big promotional thing, but whatever. What I was led to do was start my own business, and I still do it only part time to this day. But it is a carpentry, a woodworking business where I typically do art pieces, cutting boards, things like that. But the whole, and this, it's still developing. So you know, if any of y'all come across it and see it, like I'm working on it. I'm freaking working on it. But I felt the Lord telling me that or at least this, I don't know. I know how YouTube, y'all get crazy about people saying God spoke to me. So it wasn't audible, but I get this impression, this push to feel like it was like, I want you to create this business, and uh, you're going to develop a logo that you're going to put on each board, and it's going to be a Christian business. It's going to be a Christian foundation. So there's going to be some sort of biblical tie on every single piece that you make, whether it's a logo. On some of these pieces, I've embedded mustard seeds, and for the faith of a mustard seed to move mountains, salt for being the salt of the earth, um, little creative things like that. And it's still developing, and the creativeness, it's just going to continue to grow. Like I said, it's in its infancy, and I'm trying to do it as much as I can, but it's a part-time thing still. Hopefully it can be full-time one day. Um, I'm praying for that. I said hopefully. I'm praying for that. But it's whatever God wants for me. I mean, really at this point, like that's where I'm at with everything. But um, so I started that business, and somehow ended up I'm cleaning dealerships with some buddies of mine. I'm cleaning the dealerships at night, so doing janitor or custodial work at night, sweeping and all that stuff. And during the day, cleaning frac tanks, getting inside of frac tanks and OBM tanks, diesel tanks, and all sorts of different tanks. And the irony is that I'm using the pressure washer that I bought, that I'd sold to them, and I'm standing in these tanks, pressure washing these tanks. And initially, I was offered the contract when I was doing the pressure washing stuff, when I was going down that route. I was offered the contract from what I was told. So this is what I felt like I was giving up, because it's what I was told. Now, If the contract ended up being different, I don't know. But I didn't give up whatever this contract was in reality. I gave up what I was told it was, and I said I couldn't do it. And I was told it was a $250,000 contract that will pay you this year, and starting out, and all you have to do is clean these tanks or whatever. Actually, I'm pretty sure that they made more than that, which is great. I'm not throwing shade at them at all. I'm not. No strife between me and my buddies that were doing the cleaning the tanks at all. But I just was like, God, what are you doing? Like, you told me not to clean these tanks or not to do the pressure washing job, and now I'm holding the pressure washer that I bought and sold to them, because now I'm not doing the pressure washing. I'd given all the equipment to my buddy who was doing the pressure washing. I gave it all to him, and that I was going into business with. And the other group of guys that were also my buddies, they took the frac tank job. And so they had bought my pressure washer from me. And next thing I know, I'm standing in this frac tank, completely miserable, covered in oil-based mud. Or I'm in an OBM tank, covered in OBM, oil-based mud. And I'm just like, God, why am I, what are we doing? How is it that you're telling me not to do this and now I'm doing this? And this is not, it feels unfair, and it is really making things difficult for me. And we were struggling financially at this time because I just wasn't making enough to support my son and my wife. And I didn't want her to work. I still don't. She still doesn't work, which is great. I mean, she can work if she wants, but first and foremost is our family first. And we don't want, this isn't throwing shade at anyone else who does it differently. But we want to try everything that we can to avoid from having strangers raising our children for as long as we can. And we're doing what we can to make that happen. So I was doing that job with the frac tanks and OBM tanks and everything, and eventually got to the point where I was like, God, I don't have the money. You're going to have to do something, because I don't know. And I started fasting and praying. I'd had the number in my head of 34, and I'd fasted. I'd taken away all I drank, or all I had was water and vegetables and fruit. Water, vegetables, and fruit, I think. Anyway, I was cutting out. I was, not as big into working out as I used to be, but at the time I was much more into it. And protein all day long, chicken. That's all I want. Beef and eggs. I'm trying to get protein, so I'm eating this carrots and chickpeas, and I'm like, boy, this is rough. First world problems. So I'm fasting and praying for 34 days straight, and then I think it was after that period of time had subsided. I want to say it was like a month or something after I get offered a job to do the work I do now. I'm not going to say the name of my company, but I do facet of work within the oil field, and that's all I'll say. So that was a real testing moment. And that was a time where I got to really see the power of fasting and prayer, and beginning to still learn. I'm still learning it today, but learning the voice of God. Prayer for financial support. And so I get this job that it's a big life change that everyone in the oil field's used to it, but I'm not. I'm not from the oil field. I don't come from an oil field family, and I'm just not. So it's like I gotta travel for work. It's 2 weeks on, 2 weeks off, which is tough because it takes me away from my family. I'm very, very big on family. I think it is one of the most important, underrated things. The community is one of the most underrated, most important things that we have, and I think it's neglected a lot. So it's hard for me to travel out there and leave my family for 2 weeks, 3 weeks at a time, depending on what it is. But I got to do what I got to do right now, and I know that the Lord's got a plan for me. But I've had some tests while I've been here, while I've been at this job too. There was a time where I started making some money, doing better, like much more comfortable. But now he's like, all right, I want that 10%. He always wanted that 10%, but your boy wasn't listening. So I started to listen. I'm starting to chime in. What's the Lord saying? And and he tells me he wants that 10%, and I'm like, okay, I don't have it though. Like, if I give you 10%, I'm not gonna be able to afford anything. Um, and he just said, "You do it." So I was like, "All right." And this was one of my big first leaps of faith. That was a little scary at first. Now it's normal. It's crazy how you take those leaps and then you get comfortable in those leaps, and it's like, oh, this is normal. This is regular life. It's not even a problem. It's not even hard now. But I mean, things can get hard. All right, God. All right. Please don't come at me. But they he had told me to start tithing and taking out that 10%. And luckily, or not luckily, but I was blessed to have an incredible friend that works out there who gave me a place to stay and has been a huge help. I don't want to give up. I don't want to say too much information because, he's. I'm not telling everybody else's freaking business, but he just helped me a lot. He came in at a time where he was an answer to a prayer, and God told me to take that leap. I took that leap, and He provided, and it still has been this entire time, has not stopped. Which is, I have zero doubt that He will continue to. I have complete faith He will continue to provide for me and my family as long as I've got my eyes on Him and walking in the right direction. And that's obviously not the reason that I do it, but it's growing. It's growing my faith. It's helping me understand what it really means to have a walk of faith and walk side by side with the Lord. I'd like to talk about another moment that was me helping me learn the voice of the Lord, and I'm not going to say this person's name, but it was one of my friends that has been and is still continuing to walk the walk of sanctification and growing in a closer relationship with the Lord. And he's been a major blessing on my life. He had prayed. I didn't know this, but he had prayed that he had prayed for like 10 other people to do all these different individual things, and then I was a part of the prayer, and he said, you need to, if you're really here and trying to help me in my life, if you're like the real deal, like, I don't want to say exactly what he prayed because I don't really know. So, but it was a prayer to God. It was a scenario where he was like, I need to see these things happen so I can just be like, he's just, he was in a tough spot. So, anyways, I, without knowing any of that, had been feeling this push to give him money, which is not something that I naturally would have felt. I just, I really wasn't sure. I was like, I don't know, it seems weird. Like, I don't want to offend him and just be like, make him think he's poor or something. I wasn't trying. But it was nagging me. And, so I ended up sending it to him, and come to find out, he was like, man, I had this prayer. You just answered it. And, this is like incredible. And I was like, oh my gosh, that's what God sounds like. That was His voice in my ear telling me to give him that money. So you can put those pieces together and be like, okay, so next time I hear that, it still requires discernment, still learning, still requires discernment, still requires matching it up with the Word of God. But, it's just step by step. You learn the voice of God. And I was like, that small voice that was in my head was telling me to do that. That was God telling me to do that. And I just answered I didn't answer a prayer, but He used me in that moment to answer a prayer that my buddy had prayed and that I was included in without knowing it. And I thought that was really cool to be involved in that and to be able to see that and get confirmation immediately. It's not always that you get confirmation immediately like that. And when you do, it's really a blessing, and you should treat it like a blessing. And you better learn from it, because that doesn't always happen. But yeah, that was another scenario where I was just learning the voice of God. So you might have noticed that there was never a time where I was like, and then everything changed that day, and now I'm following God. It was a slow sanctification, falling back and forth, falling back into old habits, splitting up with my then girlfriend or fiance, now wife. Now she's my wife, and we haven't split up as a married couple, but like before then we had split up, and going through it together was was something that not everyone gets, I know. And even though it was hard, it does turn out to be a blessing in many ways. To have somebody that you go through things like that with. My wife ended up getting baptized. I wish I remembered the exact date. I mean, it was somewhat recent. I don't know. Maybe I might be way off. She might see this and be like, "Oh my gosh!" But I don't know. It was like 8 months ago, or maybe some. I don't know. Could be off. But she got baptized. That's all that matters. And so she's following the Lord, and we pray together, and just trying to do everything that we can to try to do the right thing. Grow. It's not just about doing the right thing, though. It's also about the relationship. Constantly, the grass that you water is going to grow, and the grass that you neglect is going to die, and it will be obvious. And it'll be obvious not just to you, but to the people around you. I'm closing in on the end of this thing here. Last thing I wrote was, now we're going to church. We're raising our son, and hopefully many more kids in the future. I'm not afraid. I feel the call in my life to have lots of kids. I know a lot of people don't feel that way, and they're like, heck no. But I feel like, as a Christian man who is really trying to raise kids with Christian values and wants to change the world for the better, you just have to be the change. You have to be the change that you want to see. And I mean, people change the world, so I'm going to just have more people. That's just the way I see it. And have as many as you can. Let's get those odds stacked up on our side. So, there's probably a lot that I left out. I'm sure I just have stories for days if someone was to sit down with me personally and just go through everything. But, that's all I really got, I guess. But, maybe I'll get back on here and make videos about something else in the future. Maybe I'll talk about some more of the other stuff that I've had, or some of these experiences, and what the learning experiences I've gotten when it comes to scripture and these other experiences. I've touched on some of them already, but that's really all I got, man. So